Back in 2021, a harrowing incident happened on the set of Rust. It entirely changed the futures of everyone on set. What was meant to be a quiet, simple indie film suddenly became one of the most discussed productions in cinematic history. Not for its story, nor for its A-list actor, but for the tragedy that struck behind the scenes. This is a first look at Rust, an in-depth exploration of the movie, the fatal shooting of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins, and the ripple effects that changed Hollywood forever. At first glance, Rust was nothing unusual. An indie western starring and co-produced by Alec Baldwin, written and directed by Joel Souza. It was set in the 1880s and followed the story of Harland Rust, an outlaw who breaks his teenage grandson out of prison after a wrongful murder conviction. A gritty, dusty tale of redemption and frontier justice. But on October 21, 2021, during a rehearsal at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, a single shot was fired. A prop gun held by Alec Baldwin is discharged. Cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was fatally wounded. Director Joel Souza was injured. And suddenly Rust was no longer just a movie. The film set had become a crime scene. The vision behind Rust was rooted in the revival of the classic Western. Gunfights, dusty towns, and morally gray characters. Baldwin, a longtime fan of the genre, described the project as a labor of love. Halyna Hutchins was a star on the rise. Born in Ukraine, she had quickly earned respect as a gifted cinematographer with a keen eye and powerful visual storytelling. Her work on Arch Enemy had turned heads, and she was gaining a reputation as someone to watch. Her role on Rust was more than technical. She helped shape the film's look and feel. This wasn't just another job. For Halyna, it was an artistic stepping stone. For many, it was a passion project. For some, it would become a nightmare. At its heart, Rust was envisioned as a gritty, emotionally charged Western, a throwback to classic genre, but with a deeper moral edge. Written and directed by Joel Souza, Rust followed the story of Harland Rust, an outlaw played by Alec Baldwin, who comes out of hiding after years on the run to help his grandson escape a death sentence. Set in 1880s Kansas, the film explored themes of redemption, generational trains, justice, and the blurred lines between right and wrong in the unforgiving frontier. This wasn't just a shoot-'em-up cowboy flick. It aimed to be a character-driven drama, portraying a world where morality is murky and survival comes at a cost. Baldwin, who also produced the film, was deeply invested in bringing this raw, emotional vision to life. Halyna Hutchins, the film's cinematographer, was handpicked for her bold visual style. A rising star in the industry, Hutchins had a reputation for pushing boundaries and finding beauty in darkness. Her goal was to capture the stark realism of the Old West while framing it with a poetic lens, natural lighting, wide-angle shots of barren landscapes, and intimate close-ups of characters wrestling with their demons. Pre-production kicked off with high hopes. The casting featured a blend of Hollywood names and indie talent. The set was built to reflect historical accuracy, and the crew, many of whom were seasoned professionals, aimed to make Rust a standout piece in the Western revival movement. The film wasn't just supposed to entertain, it was meant to resonate. It sought to ask deeper questions about justice, legacy, and the cost of violence. But tragically, the story that was meant to unfold on screen was eclipsed by the horrors that happened behind the camera. Behind the lens, Rust faced the usual indie film challenges, including tight budgets, long hours, and a demanding shoot schedule. But whispers of discontent began to surface early on. 6 crew members reportedly walked off set the day before the shooting, citing unsafe working conditions and delayed pay. Rumors of cutting corners and lapses in safety swirled. Some even claimed there had been 2 previous accidental gun discharges on set, raising red flags long before tragedy struck. Central to the controversy was Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the film's 24-year-old armorer, responsible for weapons safety. It was only her second film as head armorer. Questions would later be raised about her experience and whether she was overburdened on a set already struggling with crew unrest. It was supposed to be a simple setup, a rehearsal inside a church set, no filming, just blocking. Baldwin was handed a Colt .45 revolver and was told it was cold, an industry slang for a gun with no live rounds. Baldwin went ahead to practice a cross-draw, but unfortunately the cold revolver discharged. A single bullet, real, not a blank, struck Halyna Hutchins in the chest, passed through her, and hit director Joel Souza in the shoulder. Panic broke out. Calls were made. Medics rushed in. Halyna was airlifted to the University of New Mexico Hospital, where she was later pronounced dead. She was 42 years old. Hollywood and the world was stunned. How could something like this happen on a modern movie set? How did a real bullet end up in a prop gun? What followed was a legal and ethical reckoning. Alec Baldwin, once a revered Hollywood veteran, now faced intense scrutiny. not just as an actor, but as the producer on the film. Investigations were launched, lawsuits filed, and fingers pointed. In the weeks following the shooting, questions whirled like dust in the New Mexico wind. Who was responsible? Was it an accident or criminal negligence? Alec Baldwin claimed he never pulled the trigger, that the gun discharged on its own. Forensic experts disagreed, and according to FBI analysis, the gun could not have fired without the trigger being pulled. Meanwhile, armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was charged with involuntary manslaughter. Prosecutors argued that she failed in her core duty, which was to ensure that no live rounds were anywhere near the set. Her defense? Lack of proper staffing, unclear communication, and pressure from procedure to cut corners. Director Joel Souza, who recovered from his injuries, remained largely silent in public, focusing instead on honoring Helena's memory. The set was shut down indefinitely, but lawsuits followed, including one from Helena's family against Baldwin and the Rust producers. The fallout didn't stop at that. Hollywood studios, unions, and filmmakers began reevaluating their own practices. Calls grew louder for the complete ban on real firearms in film sets. Production shifted to airsoft replicas and CGI muzzle flashes. Out of the tragedy came a movement, Helena's Law, a proposed set of safety regulations aimed to prevent future deaths. The industry, once reluctant to change, was forced to confront a dangerous status quo. Halyna Hutchins wasn't just a name in a headline. She was a mother, a wife, a filmmaker with a sharp vision and a kind soul. Born in Ukraine and raised on Soviet military bases, she worked her way into the heart of Hollywood, camera in hand. She had a gift, one that translated emotions into images, shadows into stories. She was a trailblazer, one of the very few women in a male-dominated field, and a mentor to others climbing the ladder she nearly reached the top of. Her family was devastated. Matt Hutchins, her husband, remained publicly composed but resolute. "We want accountability," he said, "but most of all, we want her remembered as the artist she was." In a rare agreement between the family and the producers, it was decided Rush would be completed, not to profit, but to honor Helena's final vision. Matt Hutchins would serve as an executive producer. In April 2023, production resumed in Montana, this time with stricter safety protocols and a renewed vow: no live rounds on set. For Alec Baldwin, the legal cloud still looms. Though charges were initially dropped in 2023, they were later refiled in 2024. The trial, ongoing at the time of this video, will decide his fate. But for everyone involved, the deeper wound is emotional, not just legal. The lessons learned from Rust are now part of the DNA of modern filmmaking. Safety first, always. No movie, no matter how compelling, is worth a human life. Halyna Hutchins dreamed of telling stories that moved people, that made them feel something. And in a painful twist of fate, her final story had done just that, not through the screen, but through the raw truth of reality. The story of Rust began as just another indie western. Dreams, dust, and cinema. But in one devastating moment, it became something else entirely: a tragedy, a cautionary tale, and a symbol of systemic failure. Halyna Hutchins wasn't just a cinematographer. She was a visionary, a mother, a dreamer, someone who believed in the magic of storytelling. And her story was cut short by a tragedy that never should have happened. As the industry moves forward, we're left with difficult questions. What went wrong? Who was responsible? And how can we make sure this never happens again? While Rust continues as a film, the legacy it leaves behind is far greater than any box office number. It's a call to action, a demand for better, a reminder of the human cost behind any frame. Like and share this video with your friends, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. See you on the next one.